Hi, my name is Carmen Bowman. I have fun calling myself a regulator turned educator. I did get to survey in the state of Colorado for many years. I also got to work for CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, the Division of Nursing Homes in Baltimore, being a federal surveyor and getting to train surveyors nationally. It's been my joy to be very involved in the culture change movement. A subcontractor then for CMS on a lot of culture change projects. I call my business Edu-Catering, catering education for compliance and culture change. So speaking of culture change, here is a definition. Culture change is a transformation that is anchored in values and beliefs that return control to the elders, to the older people, to the people who live in a nursing home and those who work closest with them. Our ultimate vision is a culture of aging that is actually life-affirming, it's actually satisfying, it's humane and meaningful. I love this part. Culture change can transform a facility into a home, a patient into a person, and a schedule into a choice. You will hear a lot more about that. In fact, you won't hear the institutional language so much, you'll hear change language. And this definition comes to us by the Pioneer Network. This was an organization that led the culture change movement for almost 30 years, founded in 1997. Look at the name, Pioneers. These folks across the country were really cutting a new path, swimming upstream against a very strong institutional culture. And they have 13 actually, core values, and one I'd like to draw to your attention is this: to put the person before the task. That is another way of saying culture change. When we say culture change, we do mean just changing the institutional culture. We also reference it, as you heard, as transforming institutional culture. Pioneers, again, here it is, transform cultures that are very rigid. We have a lot of rigid, rule-oriented cultures. Sadly, we don't have to. They've proven it. They've changed them to be more flexible so that team members, I say that instead of kind of that generic word staff, can honor resident preferences and choice is actually maximized. Our movement is really about changed mindset, changed heart, changed culture, changed principles, philosophy, values, and it's not about programs. I would love to encourage you to think about that word program. It's the mark of an institution. We call everything a program when your life and my life doesn't comprise of so many programs. And in recent days, the Pioneer Network and the Greenhouse Project have joined to now become the Center for Innovation. Let's look at the language. I'd love to show you something here. So if someone older has to move out of their home, the time has come to leave this dear home of 40 years that's so hard. Where do most people tend to move to first? Independent, what's it called? Independent living. And then they need more assistance. And where do they move to? Assisted, what's it called? Assisted living. And then they need more care. And what do we call it? Long-term care. I want you to watch this. Where did the living go? Even in our language, even in our titles, the living disappeared, but it doesn't have to. Something else I want to show you, and I'll bring it together here. CMS in the State Operations Manual, first section, definitions, back in 2016, defined for the first time person-centered care. It means to focus on the resident as the locus of control and support the resident, the person, in making their own choices and having control over their daily lives. Sadly, most nursing homes aren't known for that, but it's right in the regs. And something I want to point out is, to be honest, I don't know that that really defines care. I think it defines living. It's more than care. In fact, beware, person-centered care is not the same as culture change. Somewhere along the way, people started to interchange the terms. Culture includes care, but it's a lot more than care. So person-centered care does not equal culture change. And to be honest, the idea, the language of person-centered was already outdated when CMS did publish this in 2016. So think about person-centered. Wow, that's good, right? But in the movement, we had already moved on to calling it person-directed. One of the leaders in our movement, Dr. Maggie Calkins, pointed out at a big national event, the Creating Home Symposium in 2018, that self-directed is what we mean. Because you and I want to self-direct our life as long as we live, no matter where we live. And so we had moved on to person-directed, self-directed, resident-directed, and we had moved on from care. Think about this. Care gets talked about a lot. Medical care, clinical care, care, long-term care, person-centered care. And what's missing, like I pointed out, even in the definition, I think it represents life personally. And so learning from others in this movement, we need to focus more on the life that people are living and not just the care that they are receiving. And we'd love to invite you to join us. In fact, that's a premise of this Culture Change Grant project that's been taking place in Wyoming for 3 years. We call it Implementing Culture Change Throughout Wyoming, Affecting Resident-Directed Living, and get this, team member retention. Why? Because 30 years of our culture change movement have shown you will retain and recruit team members to want to work there when it's a change culture. And so as a part of this grant, I got to work with 5 nursing homes per year, and I got to invite them to learn about culture change. They committed to education once a month, they committed to a coaching call once a month, and they committed to implementing at least 3 culture change practices. And it's my joy to tell you that every home ended up implementing more than 3. You'll see. So a famous tool in our movement is called the Artifacts of Culture Change, and it was actually funded by CMS, Division of Nursing Homes. I was very fortunate to be the subcontractor to design this tool that did come out in 2006, and it helped homes to show the changes they were making. In fact, think of the word artifacts. If you think of a culture that has gone on before us, an artifact is something we find to prove that it existed. So these are tangible, concrete things that you can go look at and practically touch. If there's a dog that lives in the building, you can go see it and pet it. And purposely, we didn't make it an interview tool. They also exist, but they're more time consuming. We wanted to get to the practices. And so this tool represents the practices of a change culture. So be aware, watch, look around at the artifacts of an institutional culture, and then realize that there's lots of artifacts of change culture that are now markers of home. They are practices that reflect home. And then we got a grant and came up with an Artifacts of Culture Change 2.0. In fact, the Pioneer Network received the grant, a CMP grant from the state of Maryland. Thank you, Maryland. And we redesigned it, and it now has a much more simple tally point system. A home would indicate whether or not they have a practice fully implemented or partially implemented or not implemented, and I like to add yet. This really is a self-assessment tool. We refer to it as an inspirational and educational tool as well, just because if you read it, you'll get excited and you will learn. And then you could decide to implement some of these practices, and then it can be a benchmarking tool where you perhaps complete it annually and see progress. The development of the Artifacts 2.0 version was done very carefully and deliberately by PhD Dr. Amy Elliott, who's worked with us with this tool the whole time, and was careful to validate it and also get it published, which it now is, and it's part of the international journal called Activities, Adaptations, and Aging, Dignified and Purposeful Living for Older Adults. In fact, we are making this journal a culture change focused journal, and we do have an open call for papers for culture change and transformation, and we'd love to invite anyone to consider doing some research and getting it published in our journal. And now we turn our attention to the great state of Wyoming, and we zoom into the town of Casper, and we learn from the community Life Care Center of Casper. This particular team joined the project midway in what we call year one. It's a 3-year grant, and so it is unique to them that they have been a part of the culture change work for a 1.5 years. And because of that, you will see that they immediately chose more than the required 3 practices. They actually picked 8 and ended up implementing 14 to some degree, which we will share with you as we go.
My name is Stacy Cadwell. I'm the administrator of Life Care Center of Casper, formerly the director of nursing. My big aha moment was that we actually had open dining and wasn't using it to the best of our ability. So now with the open dining that we have, we let our folks actually sleep in, not be forced to get up. They're happier, they're brighter, they're more up to go to activities and enjoy the day with the rest of us.
And now we begin with open dining. Open dining is a practice of the culture change movement, and typically it is served for about a 2-hour meal span. Now, a lot of people ask, can this be done? And they get a little nervous about a certain regulation I'd like to show you about that does not hold us back at all, and that is at 809 CMS tag F809, frequency of meals. I want to jump to the middle paragraph first. We all learned this as the 14-hour rule, but it's too bad we didn't learn it as the 16-hour rule. And what we're referring to is from supper to breakfast the next day. And if you want to think about why would there even be hours assigned? Sadly, in our history, it's because maybe dinner was early, like 4:30, and then waiting for breakfast was too long for people. So most regs are because these things weren't happening. But let me show you something here. First of all, it says there must be no more than 14 hours between a substantial evening meal and breakfast the following day. Most people stopped reading, I guess. But it goes on, except when a nourishing snack is served at bedtime. Up to 16 hours may elapse between that substantial evening meal and breakfast the following day if a resident group agrees to this meal span. So just notice how most nursing homes naturally have a nourishing snack served at bedtime already. And if people wanted to do this, and if the residents, the people who live there wanted it, boom, it's doable. However, it's really not even an issue. Here's why. When you have open dining times, imagine just open hours for supper. And now think of end of supper and now overnight to breakfast, open hours for breakfast. The end of the supper hours to the beginning of the breakfast hours, I've done it numerous times in different scenarios. It usually meets the 14 hours. So now what we tend to forget is those open hours really honor the people who live there. And they provide for all the requirements of choice. We're supposed to honor choice of schedules. We honor sleep now. We honor when someone actually wants to eat breakfast. It becomes not institutional. So these regs support it. Here's some other support from the first paragraph. Each resident must receive, and you must provide at least 3 meals a day. Again, why? I guess because some weren't doing it at one point. At regular times comparable to normal meal times in the community or in accordance with resident needs, preferences, requests, and their plan of care. So notice CMS is smart. They know that not everyone might want to eat at the same time. What are people's needs, preferences, requests? And then similarly, suitable, nourishing alternative meals and snacks are to be provided to people who want to eat at those non-traditional times or outside of a scheduled meal service time. consistent with, again, the plan of care. So the point here is we have backup. CMS gets this. There's nothing holding us back. And now think about this. Everything is better with open dining. It's more relaxed. Everyone is more relaxed. CNAs are not rushed to get people, everyone to the dining room at the same time. And once they're all in there, can they be served anyway at the same time? No. So what's the experience of the person living there? Usually it's hurry up and wait and falling asleep at the table. And guess what? That is not safe for people to fall asleep at the table and then we come along and try to get them to eat. That's actually unsafe. We talk a lot about safety. You know, think about that arbitrary breakfast time in the nursing home maybe you're familiar with. Who set that breakfast time? Does anyone even know? It's fun to think about. Like, it was probably set 10, 20, 30 years ago. Were the people who live there now even asked? And then that arbitrary set time is what drives everything. The drive, you'll hear people say in this video, in fact. And everything's about, hurry up, get everyone to the dining room. My job is to get everyone to the dining room. So that creates get up lists in the morning and like weird wording, the get ups, the downs at night, the put downs even, I've heard. Oof, how many of you don't even eat breakfast? I don't. And what would happen to us? People in this movement have taught us, here's what would happen to us. Learned helplessness. We just learned that, well, I guess I have to let them get me up, take me to the dining room, eat a few bites of toast so that I can go back where? To bed. That's called wasted time, inefficient use of time. That is not where you save money when it's inefficient. You save money when it's efficient and you don't wake people up and you tiptoe in sleeping and you tiptoe back out. That's efficient. And that's what people want. And you should not be made to eat breakfast, and you should not have to learn learned helplessness. CNAs also learn learned helplessness because they learn they're helpless. People are telling them they have to get people up and have to take them to breakfast. And so open dining becomes the answer for all of us, creates choice for the people living there. It empowers the people who work there to honor the people who live there, to not wake them up, to help them get dressed when they wake up. There's less rush, no more rush hour. CNAs, you're gonna hear in this video, tell us they have more time to give better care, the care they wanna give, to help someone get dressed the way they want to be, hair done the way they want. And look at that, we change our system and we meet people's needs better. So set meal times actually is a red flag that choice is not being given. Whereas open dining is a great, boom, cue that choice is being given and honored.
Yeah, so we started doing the open dining in order to provide a place for these residents to come and go as they please, like they would at home, and to try and make it similar to how they would go in their kitchen at home. Yeah, so we have had open dining times, but I think we didn't realize the impact it would have on the residents. And so now that we're doing it and providing a place for them to come, I think more residents are taking advantage of it, and that we are kind of advertising it more, I guess you could say, and just having more options available for them has been really beneficial. So this one resident, she, there's kind of a language barrier, but she always comes down to the kitchen and says like, I'm really hungry. And she's always looking for a snack or something to eat or drink. And we kind of always just let her sit in the dining room and enjoy her milk or cookie or sandwich, whatever we give her. So I think, and that kind of helps to just give her a place to enjoy that instead of having to be in her room or in the hallway. So in the old culture, she would come down to the kitchen and we would say, oh, you're not allowed in the kitchen. You can't be in here. And kind of just shoo her away, or I guess redirect her away, where now it's kind of like, what would you like? And we direct her to the place she likes to sit. And it's just open whenever she wants to come get something to eat. So the previous executive director noticed that sign in front of the dining room, and she was like, I hate this sign. I don't want it anywhere near the kitchen. Like, it should always be open instead of having a closed sign in front of it. So I kind of helped facilitate that. Every time I'd see it in front of the kitchen door, or she would see it in front of the kitchen door, we would take it away and open the doors. So it was always open. So the continental breakfast was started because the nursing staff implemented this new part of the culture change movement where we let the residents sleep in and get up whenever they want, to promote healing and better sleep and all the good things. And the continental breakfast was to kind of make sure that they still got something to eat, even though it wasn't within the normal breakfast hours. So we set up a table in the dining room, kind of like in a hotel, with just oatmeal, cold cereal, coffee, juice, fresh fruit, and like muffins or a pastry. So if they didn't get a room tray, and if they didn't come to the dining room because they were still sleeping, they could still come down and get something, or the nurse could come down and grab something for them.
And even after that, if they want a cereal during lunch, they can have it. It's right there in the continental breakfast.
So we are trying to work towards having the kitchen open 24 hours. We started by implementing this open dining and kind of as many hours during the day when people are here that we could possibly have it open or available to get food. And we also hired this hospitality aide that she works in both kitchen and laundry and kitchen. And she kind of helps just to provide extra support in both areas. The goal was to have someone to be here kind of overnight, in the overnight hours, if anyone was awake and wanted something to eat. So yeah, the hours that the kitchen is open and that the kitchen staff are here are from 5:30 a.m. until 8:30 or 9 o'clock p.m.
There's always somebody available in our kitchen, always. It doesn't matter what time of the day it is. There's always someone available. We have 2 tray setters, we have a hostess, we have a cook, we have a prep cook. Anyone can help a resident. It's me, Katie. There's always somebody available to help the community member. It's not that hard, and sometimes we're understaffed too, and we still get it done. They're actually enjoying it and eating a little bit more, which before we only had what's on the menu or the always available menu, but some community members didn't like that. Some community members are used to eating like soups at home, and since we have that soup every day, it's been working for them. Like they actually ask when they come in what kind of soup we have on the menu that day. So it's a positive uh, update for us and the residents. We're actually trying to make more homemade like desserts. We have somebody that comes in on Tuesdays and she makes the homemade desserts for them and they love it.
So the snack portion of all of this is, which we've always had a snack cart and snacks that we put on the unit refrigerators, but we've kind of tried to make it more, I've tried to make them more healthy and more fresh things on the snack carts instead of just packaged and just like baked, like frozen cookie dough that you bake. So we've been trying to, we do that every day. The snack cart is always available at 2 o'clock for anyone, people who are walking by or just sitting up at the nurse's station, they can snack on something. And then in the refrigerators, they always have half sandwiches, hard-boiled eggs, string cheese, yogurt, pudding, things that they can get at any hour of the day too. So if someone's awake in the middle of the night and they're hungry, they can still have a little something.
On the snack carts, we used to have like the prepackaged snacks, but we're actually making homemade snacks now, and they're loving it. They love it. So yeah, we're trying really hard for our community members to have a better life in this place, be more happy, so that they now wait for the snack cart.
When I had lunch with all of the residents, they were, "Why are you here? Did you forget your lunch?" And I said, "No, I wanted to spend my lunchtime with them." And it was a great experience. We just made small talk.
Yeah, so the part of the culture change movement that we're working on is helping or having residents come in and kind of help either prepare food or set up the dining room, roll silverware, any of that type of stuff that normally they would probably do at home. So kind of having a place for them to contribute here.
Well, ma'am, I was raised on a ranch, so you didn't sit around too much or too long. You just got out and do what you had to do, and you do it. And volunteer works is a good idea. I mean, it makes you feel good where you're not lazy. Well, it makes me feel good because I feel like I'm not helpless.
wow, they even offered a class to the people who live there to learn about all the volunteer opportunities. That is well done. They also have a list of the volunteer opportunities, particularly in the dining area, which includes preparing food. I really admire this team for making it work. And many people ask, can this be done? Isn't it sad? We're always worried, can this be done? And the regulations support us once again. This reg used to have the title work, which is really appropriate. Now it doesn't really have a title, but 566 says residents have a right to choose or refuse to perform services. It used to just say residents have the right to not work. And it feels like, again, we stopped reading, but it went on to say, and they have the right to work if they want to. And so they did drop the word work. That's probably why it gets confusing. We're never making people work that live there. But we also know that people who live in a nursing home, they no longer have to make lunch, go to the store, dust, mop, make their bed. So what do they have to do? Nothing. And that's a problem as well. That's one reason why we have a culture change movement. And thankfully, there are regs that support these things. They do not detract. Did you know the culture change movement was built upon these regs? These regs go with culture change, and culture change is the way to meet the regs. So this reg points out that if someone does want to perform services, then you just do a few things that make sense. You document it for this desire to work. You get it in the care plan. You explain what we're talking about, the nature of the services, whether they're voluntary or paid. I love that. Maybe some people do need to get paid. And compensation is at or above prevailing rate, and there's agreement to this work arrangement. And there's even more. At another tag, 679 activities. Believe it or not, it addresses culture change. So it's talking to surveyors that they need to be aware that some homes may have a non-traditional approach, especially where culture change philosophy is adopted. And you might see residents involved in ongoing things in their living area that are more like a home, such as chores, preparing foods, spontaneous activities, and leading an activity. We just saw all of that. Also, that this basically reflects daily life. So you have that support as well.
One new practice that we intend to implement is to have a way when a community member passes away. We just feel it's really important to be able to give our community members the opportunity to grieve and to share their thoughts and their feelings in this way.
So this team shared with me that they had an aha moment where, guess what? It just so happened to be that 3 people who lived there did ask to not be woken up. I would be one of them. How about you? Do not wake me up. And they were honoring that. But this team, again, was honest with themselves and realized, you know, life is going pretty good for those people getting sleep that asked us to not wake them up. What if we did that for everybody? I so appreciate their honesty. Don't let only the people who ask for a good practice get it. Start to realize that sleep is good for everyone, and everyone needs good, restorative, uninterrupted sleep. I just want to show you right here as well. The whole idea of not waking people up is a culture change practice, again in the artifacts tool, that the home supports each person and their natural awakening rather than waking them on a set schedule. And did you know this is very well supported in the regulations, as you see right there in the parenthesis at the artifact item. So I want to show this to you. Tag F561, self-determination. It's always said this since 1987 that people have the right to choose. I just want to highlight schedules. The right to choose schedules since 1987. And then CMS added the next part in parentheses, including sleeping and waking times. Also, since 1987, the right to make choices about aspects of his or her life that are significant to them. Would sleep be significant to you? It would be significant to me. And look at this. When it comes to sleep, what is true choice actually? See, it's not walking around asking everybody, when do you want to get up? That sounds anti-choice. It's not. You know why? You know. What is true choice when it comes to sleep? Your body gets to decide. Your body sleeps until it's had enough, and then it wakes up. That's why we call it natural awakening. And it goes on. Look at this. CMS, in its own guidance, says that this includes choices about their schedules, again, important to them, such as waking, eating, bathing, going to bed. And we are to ensure that residents are able to get enough sleep, and this is an important contributor to overall health and well-being. That's right. Personally, I wish there was a reg that just said honor each individual's sleep. But we have enough. We have more here. If you keep rolling through the guidance, it also says that these preferences and information about a person's own schedules, their routines, should be sought proactively, yay, to fulfill their choices. And homes must not develop a schedule for care, such as waking or bathing, for staff convenience and without the input of the residents. Did you know that is part of requirements for nursing homes?
So I'm Sheree Marsh. I work at Care Center of Casper, and I am the Assistant Director of Nursing. I am constantly trying to tell our staff that we have to change our mindsets. Going through the process with you and then watching other webinars and then even doing a little of my own research has really changed, of course, my mindset. And then I've tried to show our nursing staff some of those other webinars and things like that. So me personally, the project that I took on that I was going to head up and be responsible for was the restorative sleep.
So Sheree is tapping into a practice that is common in our movement where people need what I call exposure. They need to actually hear that other teams are doing this. They need to watch the webinar or go to the other home or watch a video like this to see other nurses and dietitians and everyone explaining how they've changed culture. So one way to make things happen quicker is to find things like that to help your team learn and unlearn.
So again, and in some ways it has been challenging, but we looked at our residents that live here long term, although our rehab residents are included because of course sleep promotes healing, right? We went around, and mind you, we've been changing this as we go. So we really worked hard on working with each individual here and trying to figure out their home routines and what their preferences were. Although I'm continually letting my staff know preferences are not a schedule, because we are so geared to schedule that we need to look at the person and not the schedule. First, it started with our medical director and looking at medications, because the biggest thing was trying to let people sleep and not have to be woken up. And when we looked at it, really by numbers, we had 29 residents that we woke up between 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning to take one pill. 29 people. Now, when I went around, of course, I asked them as well, do you like this routine? Would you mind if we changed it to before you went to bedtime, because it doesn't change how the medication works in your body, because it's either an hour before you eat or 2 hours after. And almost every single one of their responses was, why didn't you guys start doing this a long time ago when I got here? I have a hard time going back to sleep at 4 o'clock in the morning after you've come in here and woke me up. So of those 29 residents, we were able to determine that 25 of them, we could ask the physician and change their medication times. There was those 4 residents that it was really crucial for them to continue to get what they were taking at that time, because of how the medication affects them, or if it had to do with pain and things like that, because we don't want them hurting when they get up either. But again, we asked them what their preference was and what their choice was. So first we started with the medications, and I did write the nurses a note that, no, you are not crazy. There is only 4 people in the morning that you have to give medication to. Then we started working on the staff, and then we introduced it to all staff as an introduction that this is coming, that we are going to let, and I know that's a horrible word, let our people sleep. But this is what they've chosen, and this is their house. So it was really trying to get people to understand that we work in their home, even though this is our job. We are entering their house. So getting that mindset changed. We also had to work with the dining room and extending breakfast time, because everybody has always been geared to, everybody has to be awake and everybody has to get to breakfast. So we've changed that. Although people can eat 24 hours a day, we have a continental breakfast after the regular normal time. They can even order something hot if they wanted something hot, but there's always something that if somebody didn't want to get out of bed until 10 o'clock in the morning, they can still go down to the dining room and have breakfast. So that drive is not there anymore. The first day that we rolled out with the staff, because then we did teaching with the aides, teaching with the nurses on kind of how it was supposed to go. The very first day I got here, I tell you what, I never had so many staff upset with me before in their lives. I had dietary staff not happy with me. I had CNA staff not happy with me. So it was really a little overwhelming at first. So then the next day, it was a little less and a little less and a little less. So now, that drive, if all of you have ever been in the nursing home, know what I'm talking about, that morning rush. So we're still busy. You're never not going to be busy here. But that has kind of lessened. So people have had to actually relearn and retrain on how to set up themselves for the day, because we don't need to start ripping people out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning. We don't need to herd everybody down to the dining room. I loved the quote, and I put it in our training at that initial all staff, and it's that Gandhi quote that says how to initiate change. And it says first they'll ignore you, then they'll laugh at you, and then they'll attack you, and then you win. And I feel like we literally went through all of those steps in this change. We're still working out a little bit of kinks, but for the most part, I think we got it. People are happier. I can tell you, when I watched the first webinar, and then I also did my own little research and looked at another facility, and their big focus was falls. Well, I can tell you, people talk about behaviors and unmet needs. What a difference. All of that is down because people aren't pissed that they're out of their beds. They're actually rested, and you're not having those behaviors that people talk about. So that was the biggest thing. Even though we would love to cut down on falls, and not that I've looked at falls yet, but I can tell you the one thing that stood out the most is those types of behaviors and unmet needs. We must be meeting them because they're way down. We haven't seen like any negative things. And my drive is reminding people the beginning of this focus was 4 hours of uninterrupted sleep, because of course it was so scary to everybody. I said, if we can start with 4 hours, we could go from there. So we do quiet time from 10 to 6. Now, to us, that means that we keep our talk down. We can still go about our duties as employees, but respecting the fact that there's sleeping people here. So with the lights, turning the lights down, keeping the hallway lights off during that 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. hour. When we did our training, I talked about how when I'm home and I have other people that I live with, if I need something, I don't turn on every single light to get what I need. I respect the other people that live in my house, and using the minimal amount of light. So that was the example that I had given to the staff. And so therefore these bright neon lights from 10 to 6 a.m. have been turned down or turned off, and using that minimal amount of light for what we need to do. The reason why we do that is because of changing our mindsets that this is their house, and trying to put yourself in their position and how would you like it in your home. And again, it's just all about changing our mindsets that this is not a facility, this is their home. So I know that was one of the hesitations, was it's been drilled in our heads that you have to do a 2-hour check. And so the guidance or the teaching that we gave was that, you know, we can still use a draw sheet under somebody, but we don't need to flip on all the lights and all that. Sometimes just tiptoeing in, we use the words tiptoeing a lot, and just pulling on that sheet to offload some. I feel like even changing the wording as far as like a community member versus a resident, because a resident could mean lots of different things. That you're a resident of a psych ward, you're a resident of the hospital. We actually have residents that come in here, which are, you know, the physicians that are still in school. So resident, I feel like, could mean lots of different things, but I don't think it calls to me as something that's homey. So when this started rolling out, of course, everybody was resistant. Staff-wise, our community members were fully on board, but it was, well, we can't do that. And I'd be like, why? But nobody could ever give me the answer of why when I'm asking them. My thought is this is a preference, this is not a schedule, because people can take a preference and turn it into a schedule. So the other thing that we did find in this, besides lowering unmet needs and things like that because people are arrested, in my mind, and I know people are probably afraid to admit it, but I always thought we herded cattle. We got everybody up, everybody sat at the nurse's station, everybody got their pills, and then we jetted them off down to the dining room. So with allowing people, or not allowing, but them just being able to naturally wake up, we found that there's nobody sitting at the nurse's station. The nurse's stations are clear. You don't have the 15 people waiting for their medicine, waiting to go down to breakfast, and when we're walking in the door. And who knows how long they've already been awake, right? Because they were on the get up list. So there is no more waiting at the nurse's station.
So changing institutional language is a big part of the culture change movement. There's so many words that sadly reflect institution, and we're trying to replace them with words that reflect normal life and home. And so it's even here on the artifacts tool. And one of the terms that this team went after, and people who live there also decided to change, was they call resident council now community council.
An effort to move away from institutional language and move towards our more normal language, if you will, we have done a couple of things. One, we have posted a word of the week that we put up in about 10 locations around the building. These are staff areas, and it just gives a nice example of more antiquated term and then what we would like to see as an alternative going forward. And those are changed out weekly, as I said, in most of those areas, just to keep them fresh and keep them on everyone's mind. But then there are two larger areas, our education room and our break room, where we're actually keeping them all up together. So it's just a nice review from time to time for the staff and coworkers who are in those areas. We also have taken our directional references to our halls here at Life Care and changed those to street names. And we've used some geographical locations here in Wyoming to name those. And those names not only are posted in the hallways, but they are also on our room roster now. So we don't have a reference again to the directional names nor to the word unit. And finally, we have also changed a couple of our breakout rooms, and those were previously just day rooms, and those have their own names now. One is the lodge and one is the cowboy room.
So one of the languages in a nursing home is asking if somebody's been toileted, and then when you say it to yourself, well, have I toileted myself today? It sounds absolutely ridiculous. It's been one of our words of the week, is using the bathroom or the restroom versus let's go to the toilet. I think it was sounds so terrible to say toileted, almost like demeaning, versus something positive like going to the bathroom, freshening up, things like that. So I think it's better changing the way that we say things, because I would be uncomfortable if somebody was saying that to me.
One fun practice this team also did was apparently they carry around candy, particularly chocolates, and if team members are overheard saying the new words, the different words, the better words, then they get a chocolate. And even if they do it on purpose, like, hey, so-and-so, I love working in this community, and the word they're replacing there is facility because it's so institutional, they get a chocolate. And that's the way to do it. Even if people do it on purpose, when you come, who cares? So now we move to another practice, mailboxes. So mailboxes per person is a practice of moving towards home, and this community decided on these mesh style mailboxes, particularly because people could see right in there if they had mail or not. They also went after another practice. It's so precious. It's the idea that institutional over-the-door call lights are replaced with a more normal porch light. Now, what we really are going after is that it would be on the side of the room door like a porch light. And even though this team was not able to make that happen, they did change the look of the call light to look more like a porch light. So this is an example on the Artifacts tool of a practice that was partially implemented, and they can be very proud of that. Aren't they pretty? Aren't they gorgeous? And it helps to take away the institutional feel. This team also did a neat thing. They did a mock-up. What you're seeing here is sort of like you get to go into the model home and look at it. Apparently community members who live there, you notice they checked out those mailboxes and decided they'd rather have the mesh. I think it's a different call light, porch light style on top as well, and that changed too. So way to go, Life Care team. That is so great to even do a mock-up for people to interact with and look at. This team also chose a practice on the Artifacts tool to get rid of nurses' stations. Many homes do get rid of them because it's a big, ugly eyesore that speaks institution and hospital instead of home, and they create a more natural desk space for the people who work there, and they intentionally create mostly tables and living room furniture so that we can create more community. That's what to do with that space instead of anything institutional. And so this team did a mock-up and really thought it out. They even invited a life safety code surveyor to come, and that person really gave them the go-ahead. They reminded them to make sure that any egress is 8 feet wide, and they realized that one sprinkler head would just have to be moved over a little bit in order to reach a corner, like a new space that would be utilized, so not hard at all. And then they chose a unique practice that we call troubleshooter. Many of you may have heard of a practice called guardian angels that's been around for a long time, and typically a team member is a guardian angel for people who live in a certain number of rooms, and they check in with them frequently and they see how things are going, and they take care of whatever they might be able to take care of, or they pass it on to the right person. It is an excellent practice. Now the troubleshooter takes it one step higher. So no matter who you are, you become sort of like a case coordinator. So what does that mean? Even if I work in maintenance, if I'm the troubleshooter for Mrs. Smith and she was supposed to get to the dentist yesterday, I double check, did she get to the dentist? Or I proactively make sure everybody knows she's got a dentist appointment before it happens. And so you wouldn't normally think of a maintenance team member doing that, but that's precisely the idea, to help ensure tight coordination of what this person needs. It can be done so beautifully. And then this team realized, because of learning about the troubleshooter idea, that they could really beef up their own guardian angel assignments, which they already had. And they admitted that they had kind of ended up only looking at the room environmentally, making sure things were in place they should be environmentally, but they had sort of let it slip to not check in with the person themselves, and so they resurrected that. So probably technically they got it partially implemented here. A wonderful practice this home already had going. It's not on the artifacts tool, but doesn't matter. It should have been. Employees eat for free. And I just have heard over and over, this costs no money. Isn't that cool? Probably most people think, oh, what's that cost? Well, what I've learned is, you know, it ends up being a beautiful way to use up all the food that is made because it tends to go uneaten. And this team told me they've never really run out of food and it costs nothing. I think that's amazing. And I heard a sweet story from Cherie that it really helps team members, especially during bad weather, so that they wouldn't have to, let's say, run out and get something. What a lovely gift. And she also told a sweet story where she reserved the private dining room once and had a special meal with a couple of the women who lived there, and then she brought some sparkling cider to go with it. So you're blending staff dining with residents. They too have a private dining room, which is a big plus, and staff getting to eat there for free. Isn't that just a great combo?
Like I mentioned, we have a special resident who likes to come in all day and ask for a sandwich. And she was actually losing weight. But since it's open 24/7, she can come in at any time and ask for a sandwich or a pastry or anything she wants. And she's actually gaining a little more weight since the dining is open 24/7.
Our open dining has helped with the restorative sleep. People are able to sleep in without being woken up. Our CNAs are less stressed about having to get everybody woken up and down to the dining room at the exact same time every single day. People are allowed to just get up and move around and go at their own time and pace.
So as part of this project, teams complete the Artifacts 2.0 tool first, and then they also complete it at the end of our time together, usually 1 year. This team ended up being 1.5 years, like I mentioned, and guess what? I do believe that maybe some of the outcomes bear that out. So first of all, you see improvements in the artifacts tallies, fully implemented increase from 25 to 33%, partially implemented decreased, because some of those became fully implemented. That was 49 to 47%. And then the not implemented figure also went down because they implemented more, from 25 to 20%. Those are all improved tallies. And then we also looked at turnover, and guess what? In all 4 areas that we looked at, the life care measurements went up. So overall turnover went down from 73 to 59%. CNAs, we have high numbers through COVID days. 106 though went down to 72%. RNs 100% went down to 67%. And just a little win here, LPNs 50% down to 47%. Congratulations, Life Care of Casper.
So even though this part of our journey for culture change is coming to an end. We, as a committee, still look forward to being able to get together twice a month and come up with our continued strategies for implementing culture change here at Life Care.
And we did, and they did. Life Care of Casper did affect resident-directed living, and they affected team member retention. So Life Care of Casper shows that changing institutional culture can bring about many of the outcomes everyone wants.
We had 29 residents that we woke up between 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning to take one pill. 29 people. Again, it's just all about changing our mindsets, that this is not a facility, this is their home.
So it has been an amazing experience going from an institutional feel to a feeling of being at home.